And we are getting live and are ready to start. You guys going to be able to see the pre-show preamble because, as usual, my computer froze right at 11 o'clock and ruined everything. But we're going to print it. Did not happen and start the show like professional. Am I on?
You're on.
Oh my God. All right. So as usual, my internet is the absolute worst internet in the entire universe. So I apologize to everyone who comes in, and normally we start the show with me doing this. But this week I left for the last 5 minutes before the show. So I hope you guys had a good time. This is Explain Yourself. I am Kevin Joseph. My co-host is...
I'm Will Allred. Hey, everyone.
And we are joined by Anthony Pollock and Mario Candelaria, and they have worked together on an anthology. Now, normally what we do is the elevator pitch on all of our projects, but this is going to be a shorter show tonight because I don't really have any beauty left in my life, but I still call it beauty sleep, and on a Thursday night, I need to get it. So we're going to go to about 10:30, 10:45 if the audience is part. So tonight, Will and I are not going to talk about our projects that we currently have running on Kickstarter, except for a 30-second elevator pitch. Will, you want to go first?
You bet. When stories come to life and threaten to fracture reality beyond repair, only an English professor and a research librarian have the knowledge and smarts to save us all. That is Crossover Division, and we've got Crossover Edition 1 through 3 on Kickstarter now.
And I am doing Tart, the time-traveling demon hunter goes to the Wild West. Tart Acid wakes up at the beginning of each adventure without any idea where she is or when in time she is, but she does know there's a demon causing trouble, and it's up to her to stop it. So if you want to hear more about those, you can go to the links we put up. And tomorrow night at 11, Will and I will be back, and we're going to go on a much deeper dive. But Anthony and Mario were nice enough to join us on a Thursday night. So what we're going to ask Anthony is, you don't have to do the 30-second pitch. Introduce us to producing the End of the World anthology.
Producing the End of the World is a post-apocalyptic anthology. Spoilers. I just don't know what to say. If you can't figure out that this is an end of the world or post-apocalyptic anthology from the title, then the comic book probably isn't for you. Producing the End of the World is a anthology which explores the humanism in end of the world scenarios. So when we first embarked on this journey, and when I was looking for pitchers to have their short stories featured, I made a conscious decision to avoid all zombie Holocaust scenarios, because at the end of the day, if you want to read about zombies, go pick up a Kirkman book. Apart from that, it was just about establishing the boundaries for the creators around the end of the world has to happen. It has to happen in the script somewhere. It has to happen on the pages somewhere, but it just has to happen. And we need to explore how the characters adapt to the end of the world situation. It's available on Kickstarter now, and we just hit 40% of our goal.
Nice. And you've got how many days left on the campaign? You've got quite a while, correct?
22, I think.
Nice. Joey Galvez hopped in and said, how is it going, fellas? It is going great. Joey gives us our chance to come and do this on the Geek Collective. So, Joey, thank you for popping in. And we'll get the shout-out follow-up, the Geek Collective, for giving us our chance to ramble and rumble and talk about anthologies.
And make us look much more professional than we actually are.
You know what? Until I start the show like I did tonight, and we admit just how much of amateurs. So how did you go about picking the creative teams, or did you just put out a shout for pitches? How did the creative teams come to you, or did you go to the creative teams?
I put up a blog post about looking for people to pitch from the writing aspect as well as the artistic aspect. I made it very clear that I didn't want any writer-artist duo, although that kind of changed when Mario and joined the team, because he, the artist that we assigned him, they'd already worked together. So
so wait a second. Yeah. We thought you were bringing Mario on as nice thing. You brought him here to put him on blast.
Oh wow, yeah.
That's about as polite an Aussie blast as you can get. Yeah, so we put up a blog post looking for people, and then we just shared it on the normal socials that this is what the pitch is, this is what we're looking to do. Made it very clear what we were looking for, made it very clear what the boundaries and the ruling was around it. It caught... Get burnt. I wouldn't say it burnt any bridges, but it definitely caught a couple of people off guard. There was a bit of feedback where people didn't like the inability to pitch with an artist. But for me, I feel like that's contrary to the whole comics experience, isn't it? If you're a writer, you should be able to write for any artist, and with a few notable exceptions, an artist should be able to draw most stories. So it felt contrary to the I guess the networking that we're always doing. Whether you guys are networking to find artists, whether I'm networking to find comic book studios to cover, it's all a networking experience. And so it was interesting to find that sort of that mindset from people, but we're only talking a couple of people here, so yeah.
Well, so this process started, take us back. You said you posted it. How long ago was this?
January.
Okay.
Cool.
So Mario, you see this post, what goes through your head?
This post got shared in one of my group chats where a bunch of creators just get together and share a bunch of opportunities. And immediately I started thinking of ideas. I mean, the title, Producing the End of the World, such a fantastic title that alone brings so much imagery. And immediately I started getting ideas for the story that I eventually got picked up from Anthony.
And so you got your artist team in. We're gonna kind of pass through that. But how much editorial work, Anthony, besides accepting the pitches, were you involved in? Were you involved in the nitty gritty of the stories, or once a team was put together, did they have carte blanche to do what they wanted?
Yeah, I was involved pretty extensively most of the way through. I, to an extent where I didn't want to challenge the, I guess the mission of each short story themselves. I didn't want to edit that too much. It was more around, from my perspective, it was more about making sure that what each writer had produced was easily interpretable from the artistic level. So for me, it was more about that, making sure it flowed, making sure that it made sense in terms of where certain panels appeared on each page, looking for, I guess, room for getting rid of pages altogether if there was room for that, just so it's made for a bit more of a cohesive read. I thankfully had help from Gary Proudley, who was one of the writers who pitched it, who had some editing expertise as well. He works for Gestalt Publishing, which is one of the more consistent independent publishers in Australia.
Okay.
So they've done like work on Tom Taylor's The Deep, for instance, and things like that. So having that assistance helped me learn as I was going.
Well, you mentioned the pages. Do the stories vary in length from story to story? Oh, okay.
They do. Yeah. And in the original pitch, when we were looking for people, we were looking for stories anywhere from 8 to 12.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see anthologies that you have stories that go for one page, and I kind of feel like, why? I just kind of feel like, why is this here? This another
to get the page turn for the next story, right?
I feel like this belongs in a newspaper, like over a couple of issues. I don't know if it has its place, but that's just my opinion.
How many?
Well, it's your anthology, so your opinion rules.
How many stories are in the issue, and I mean, how many pages are we talking?
Over 160 pages and 18 stories.
Nice.
And we were talking a little. Oh, go ahead.
If you ask me if I'm ever going to do that many stories in a release again, the answer is no. There's been people getting that I've gotten frustrated with, and people have, and they've probably gotten frustrated with me. And it's just all been an interesting learning curve. But I think the 18 story sized anthology it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work indeed.
Every person that I've talked to doing an anthology on the show or just in private has really expressed how much work they are. And as an audience, I've never written in an anthology and I've never edited one. So I just get to enjoy them. And it's always is an eye-opener how much work it is getting all the teams together, getting all the stories done, getting the straggling creator stories finished, because, Team A might have been right on deadline, but if Team B is 8 weeks late and you did slot 6 pages for them, you got to get Team B done. So I have heard over and over and over again how much work it is. So hats off to finishing it first and still having a little bit of color in the beard. It's not all white. So I think you did better than some.
Yeah, well, it's firstly it's salt and pepper.
Yes.
Secondly,
no, you're Clooneying it up, buddy. You look sexy. I'm not saying you don't.
Well, we've talked a lot about anthologies. Kickstarter seems like it was almost built with anthologies in mind. I mean, there's been a lot of really good and really successful anthologies on there. I mean, and this project looks great. And it looks like you've got 27 days left. Is that right? And you're...
I wish we did. No, I think it's more like 23. Yeah.
And you're over 40% funded at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
So you guys are
No,
right
you're
on
moving
track.
good. The Kickstarter math is to get above 50%. Mm-hmm. So you're doing great. Once you get above 50%, it's this weird wave, something like 80% of campaigns that get past 50% fund. Mm-hmm. So you're moving in the right direction, and like the goal's got to get to 50%, and then this weird algorithm happens where more people hear about you, and voodoo and magic and algorithms. I don't understand any of it, but I know that once you hit 50%, you're strong. So you're doing well. Now, one thing you told me before I froze when we were talking earlier was Rob Jones is doing all of the lettering. I think that's a great idea because I think Rob Jones is a great guy and a great letterer. But what went into that decision on your end?
For me, comics at the best of times have so many moving parts. When you're just doing a regular comic issue, you can have, anywhere upwards of more than 5 people working on that issue. For me, with this anthology, because there are so many moving parts, I felt like cohesiveness was the best way to go about it. Because that way the way I looked at it was, if we get the editing on track, that's great, and that will only get us to a certain point. But if we have the lettering handled by just one person who knows their stuff, who's really on top of things, then that'll be the glue that just basically holds all the stories together.
Mm-hmm. Our friends that did the anthology, they did the same thing. They hired Taylor Esposito to do all of it for that same reason. Just, you have all these different creative teams, but having one letterer just gave it a feel from story to story. And of course, I'm sure Rob is going to do different things for Mario's story than he might for another story, because I'm sure there are quiet stories and big bombastic stories, but it'll still be organic to having the same DNA of a letterer. So I think that was a fabulous idea. And just hiring Rob Jones is smart.
Yeah, and lettering is so important. I mean, Kevin and I are kind of lettering fanboys, just because we love. I mean, they're kind of unsung heroes. You know, they do so much of the work to make a comic, and yet, you know, they're not treated as, I think, as well as they probably should be. And Rob's an awesome letterer, and Kevin and I have both had the good fortune to work with some great letterers too. And you know, it's just so important, and it's something that people don't notice a lot of, which is kind of the power, I guess, of good lettering, right?
Letterers are the offensive line of comics. They're the most important position on the field, and nobody notices them until they screw up.
Yeah.
You know, so I do want to get in. All right, so Mario, tell us about your story. You're one of the pitches. So tell us about the pitch, the story, the creative team. Let's dig in.
Yeah, so the story that I submitted to Anthony was literally the pitch. When you have when you have a title called "Producing the End of the World," I took that literally. So my story is a bunch of guys in a boardroom sitting around a table trying to decide exactly how the end of the world will come.
So you get to play with all the options.
Yeah, I mean, it is equal parts, I guess, prestige TV drama, as well as just guys sitting around in the way that we would think now the end of the world might be decided in a bureaucratic sense.
Okay.
So when I wrote this, I mean, Anthony's directive was to not have an artist attached, but as I was writing each panel, I was only thinking of Jay Sheik. I've written for him a number of times. And I think at that same point in time of my life, which was around January, February of this year, I was still working with him. So I was, of course, picturing as I was going forward in the panels, his style exactly. Mm-hmm. And after we got the acceptance, I reached out and politely asked if we could have Jay on this story specifically. Anthony said, of course, that Jay was already hired on a second story. So I was like, oh no, but they worked something out together, and Jay was able to get double duty on here. So yeah, and of course, Rob's letterings came together beautifully. I mean, I love the way that he tied just the flow, and you can see the panels and how it just goes from right to left, and from odd pages to even pages, and on the flip too is very dramatic. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better lettering experience.
No, that's awesome. I can't wait to read this. So are you printing in Australia and shipping to the world from there? What's the printing process for this one?
That's unclear at the moment.
Okay.
I've gotten multiple quotes, but I've the target in the printing costs that I mentioned on the Kickstarter, which, by the way, it was important for me to be very transparent with where the costs are going with this. You see people with pie charts and pie graphs, and but to me that doesn't really. If you show me a pie chart and 10% of this is going here and 15% is going there, that doesn't really tell me what you're actually spending the cash on. So it was important for me just to explain how much is going there. So I budgeted for worst case scenario, the most expensive quote I've gotten, just because you hear about so many Kickstarters that just go wayside afterwards
Right.
because they haven't really budgeted for worst case scenarios. So if you scroll right down to the bottom, that's where where I put the costing. So yeah,
we're going to come back to some of this art. Okay.
Yeah, sure. We well, I accounted for the eventuality of printing in Asia, and I guess because of its proximity to Australia, and because they can really, if you go through certain avenues, that makes it sound really dodgy. But if you go through Alibaba over here, there's actually a crap load of merchants which are legible, which is great, which you can go through to save money. But then I've also gone through quotes for the most expensive American printer. So
Okay.
understanding that the majority of my audience on the Southern Telepass site and socials are American. So
Right.
we've gone a couple of different ways with that.
A quick question for you about your logo. I mean, it's,
Yes.
pardon my French, pretty freaking awesome. Is that Rob that
No.
designed that?
No.
Are we at liberty to say who it is?
Oh yeah.
Is it anonymous? Do you have the hacktivist group Anonymous doing your logo?
Ben, I can never remember his surname. He had a deal with Action Lab, RIP. Sorry, did I say that too loud?
Or too soon? I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, man.
No, that's okay. I was kind of hoping you wouldn't ask me the name. That's why I didn't say anything. I can't remember.
It's a really nice logo, so I really like it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, he let's just go with the artist. I'll when this goes to YouTube, I'll correct my error and actually add the name of the guy. But it was important for me to that image was very, very early on. I basically gave my pitch of this sort of producer director type just sitting on like a director's chair, sort of almost as if he's surveying the end of the world, what has happened, and the question mark there is, did he create the what has happened? Is he responsible for the end of the world, or is he just sitting there enjoying what he can see before him? And the artist was happy to go through some different logo ideas with me, and it's that's what eventuated.
That's a beautiful
even more
cover.
on the spot.
I love that cover.
This lobster thing. Is this interior one of the stories, or is this a cover?
That's one of the stories.
I love that. I really.
That story is by Ron Pilkington. It's a fantastic one.
Cool.
So were most of your teams writer, artist, or writer, penciler, inker, colorist? I mean, how did you have some teams that filled every role, some where the artist took over, a lot of the roles? I mean, how did that all work?
Yeah, it was pretty clear when and this came down to, because we got about 250 odd submissions when combining writer and artist. I was just very clear at the start that it's a full color anthology. If you can't do coloring in your own inking, see you later.
Mm-hmm.
We're not Marvel. We don't have any inclinations to become Marvel. And at that same point, because we're not Marvel, our pockets are not, endless. So I was very clear that you need to be able to multitask with this. We're multitasking, the writers are multitasking, everyone's multitasking, having to wear a couple of hats. So we expect that from the artists as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Kyle Willis has probably the most important question for you, Anthony.
From Texas.
Yeah, that's. I thought it was Austin. I thought it was Austin or San Antonio, but I couldn't place which.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you said earlier you are not going to do another 20-team, 160-page anthology. Do you have another shorter anthology in you after this?
Yeah, probably 8 to 10 stories,
Okay.
probably. Yeah. In hindsight, I was probably a bit too kind. There probably could have been stories cut that we have, not yours, Mario. There. No, there could have been. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it sounds harsh, but there's always aspects of comics that can be cut. There's always things that, parts of stories that just aren't as strong as the rest. It's just, it is what it is. So it would be 10 stories tops.
Well, Clay Adams and Dave Schrader did the Nightmare Theater, which was the first one was over
200,
way over 200 pages.
Way over 200.
And then the second one it was under 200.
I think it was like 120. It went from like 270 to 120. So they learned the same lesson you did.
Exactly.
And it's just, it's better to do four volumes. You do 4 volumes. I mean, hey, you're even if the pitch is great, like awesome. Didn't have room for you this time. So one thing since I've only written, single issue comics, sometimes in a series, sometimes as a one shot, you've got this linear progression, beginning, middle, end, even if they're not in that order. So I think of that as almost a TV show or a movie. An anthology feels to me like an album. So how do you get 20 creative teams and decide orders of story? What goes into who goes first, last? How did you do that math?
We looked at, we looked at strength of the story, how I want the story to end, how it fits with the overall theme. We sort of, Gary and I, proudly the assistant editor, we actually went away and had to think about how we wanted that to work, and then we came back and we both decided that the stories that probably aren't as strong as some of the others sort of got almost like sandwiched between them. So almost used as palate cleansers. For instance, there are some stories in there that, if you can't figure out after seeing that lobster pick, then they get pretty bloody. So what I wanted was certain stories that are almost like a palate cleanser between, so we didn't want all the violence at the front end or the back end of the book. But at the same time, violence isn't the prerogative of this story. There's probably only about 4, maybe 5 tops that have violence in them. So, yeah.
Well, you say that reminds me of All Quiet on the Western Front. The writer of that was very careful to do a chapter of war and then a chapter behind the scene, behind the lines, because he wanted the audience to be able, the reader to be able to rest and then go through the action and then rest and then go through the action. So, whether it was really in your mind to do that, you're going with some pretty darn storied ideas of how to do it. So I think you did it right based on what I'm hearing. I guess when I read it, I guess I'll tell you if you did, but I assume you did.
Then I'll be at everyone's mercy. 4 years of reviewing, and then my head's on the chopping block.
Yeah. I mean, hey, once you put art in the world, it's not yours anymore. But you're doing the thing now. So God bless you.
You said you've got 18 creative teams on this, which I'm sure was like herding cats that are amped up on steroids and gamma rays.
I just want to correct you there, Will. So 18 writers, 12 artists.
Oh, okay.
So a couple
Gotcha.
of them are pulling double duties.
I noticed
Thanks,
that was it Richard Kemp that's artist on multiple pieces?
He's on
Did I
3.
get the name right? 3, yeah.
Three.
I saw his name come up a lot. I was like, oh man, he's been working. Kyle,
Did-
you are the
Well,
man.
it was,
We love
Thanks, Kyle.
live backing because it makes it feel like
Thank you.
for Anthony and Mario coming on here was worth their time. We try to make it fun anyway, but
Yeah.
we also want their stuff to get back.
Well, I mean, Anthony, do you have a story in the anthology, or did you? I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. I'm going to
no.
say it like this: did you just edit it? Okay.
Yeah, I just edited it. There's no other work that involves. I didn't even do that. I just read them. Yeah, good enough. Go create artist. No. I've got 2 stories that are available as stretch goals, which fit the theme. But if they don't get used, that I'll find some other way to use them in the future. So it's no biggie. Yes, I just edited.
Just edited for the last 10 months.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I do appreciate it. It's 11:30. We told you we weren't going to keep you up too late because I don't want to fall asleep on you. What is your favorite tier? What are some of your favorite tiers on this for somebody if they were going to go on the page? What would you like them to look for?
Let's go for the director's cut one. The director's cut one is what we'll be doing after it's funded is we'll be sitting down with a sort of like a commentary, but presented as a podcast where I'll be sitting down with the artist and the writer of each short story, and people get these as just for backing. I think it's an extra $5. It's not much, and they get sort of like the old when DVDs first came out, there was a director's commentary, so it's kind of that's what the director's cut is all about. So there's that. I've also project managed and marketed for other Kickstarters, all of them funded as well. So if people want me to project manage their Kickstarter, I've pretty much cut about $300-400 off my usual asking rate. So that's in there as well. So if people want to save some change but also have me run it for them, then that's a good one to look out for.
Yeah, and time is money, and when you're working one job trying to write or draw a comic and running a Kickstarter, that can be extraordinarily valuable. So that's interesting. How much is that on the Kickstarter?
500 Aussie.
Okay.
So I believe that works out to be what, 380 American, somewhere around there. Yeah.
That's the good news is it actually tells you on Kickstarter. It actually like if something's in pounds or whatever, it actually says this is what you're really going to pay, and which is really nice. But
I mean, I can tell you it's made 16 grand, but that doesn't mean anything to you guys.
It's something.
Yeah.
It's definitely pretty darn awesome.
Well, I really appreciate it. We're going to put the link up one more time. I think if I can figure out how to do it.
Yeah, do you want to show the page one more time?
Absolutely. Let's do that. Is Mario's story, or is some of the art from that on here? We need to find that if it is.
Yeah, you'll see the one with the red coats on there and some cowboys.
All right.
Nice.
Wrong tab.
And that one, go up just a little bit, please. There you go. Yeah, part of the story, of course, is a pitch meeting. So in the conversation of this story, this guy, our lead character, goes on talking about the American exceptionalism, kind of, but in a negative connotation, talking about life in the 70s from each century, 1770s to the 1870s to the 1970s.
Cool.
So we wanted to try to convey a snapshot of what something could look like at any point in those times.
Nice.
No, I can see why you asked to work with this artist another time, especially that 1970s. That's the deuce right there. That's perfect.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Jay Sheik is perfect. I mean, I've worked with him a number of times, and then, like I said, as I was writing this, I envisioned him and really only him for this. But I mean, I wrote it in a way that anyone could really take it in. But Jay really did a great job at putting this out there.
No, that's awesome. And your
great.
story's how many pages?
8 pages.
8. Okay, cool.
That one
So
there is from a Nigerian artist.
Now, the art you have on here is fantastic. The pages,
Beautifully.
you know, each page is different and unique and lovely.
Yeah, we're trying to. I feel like I'm a big fan of those anthologies, specifically televised ones, which have a bit of a difference with each story. Animatrix comes to mind. I was a huge fan of that in my sort of late teens, early 20s. Seeing the heavy metal film basically changed my life because I didn't know you could have boobs in comics.
Right.
You could. I mean, let me correct. I didn't know you could have nipples in comics. It's probably more accurate. And and even like things like The Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, the classics. They all have that unique sort of interpretation with each director, with each producer, writer, etc. So even if you look at The Outer Limits, like it's by the same people, same film company, but each writer, director, they had their own vision, and I wanted that in the art as well with this.
Yeah. So you really got some crappy people to talk about the book, Ben Templesmith?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This book will make the end of the world a little more bearable, Ben Templesmith. Yeah. And then Ryland Grant, cutting, poetic, and affecting look at life, love, and loss on eve and in the wake of total annihilation. That's a darn good book. Way to go, Ryland. Dave Cook from Killtopia, an artistic and engaging and often surprising look at the end of the world. Beautiful. All right. Gentlemen, we appreciate it. We are going to now kind of move on to talking about some of the campaigns that creators, writers, artists have been on that are still live. You're welcome to hang with us as we just share the link real quickly and give what we remember of the elevator pitch. And you are also welcome to go to sleep or start, go have your afternoon, either run or nap or beer or whatever you want. You're
still got another 20 minutes. So I'm cool to hang around.
And we'll also do this for producing Into the World. As long as it's running, we'll make sure that we mention it on our upcoming episodes as well.
Thanks, that's really nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys grace us with your presence, so we're gonna at least put it up there. Okay. Brant Fowler, Last Ember Press is Land of the Dragon. The art on this one is fantastic. This is kind of a manga, futuristic, cyberpunk influenced magic and sci-fi. Got about 2 days left on it?
Maybe just over one now, I think. Hang on a second, I can verify that for you. It ends tomorrow. So it has 21 hours to go. And Kickstarter, we were talking about Kickstarter math. He was
Kickstarter math.
About 1,500 just a day ago, and now he's funded.
Yeah,
he's well overfunded at this point.
That is beautiful. So the log line is: the kidnapping of a child with unknown power sparks a war between two warring corporations in a world forged of magic and technology. Here's what I'm going to say: go on the page that we shared and look at the motorcycle that they draw. You will back this campaign. Exactly. That's it. I saw that motorcycle. I'm like, I got to see this in action. And
I
next
kind of
up,
want to know how that motorcycle works from a mechanical level.
magic.
That's the magic part of the magic and science.
Yeah, it's like half tank, half motorcycle.
You know the part in the Dark Knight when he hops out on the motorcycle. This is kind of both. It's kind of both the Batmobile and the motorcycle, and I'm gonna guess it drives up buildings in this comic. That's just a guess. I don't know. We also have Clay Adams and Kyle Roberts, The Blazing Blade of Frankenstein. Now, the cool thing about The Blazing Blade of Frankenstein is we all know Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's masterpiece. The Blazing World is an older story that would probably actually be called the beginning of science fiction or fantasy, but it was from the 1600s. So it's so old, nobody even really, I had never heard about it till Clay Adams brought it up. And he said Alan Moore put like one panel of dialogue about it in one of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. The Blazing World's entrance is in the Arctic, and that's where Frankenstein leaves at the end of the novel. So Clay and Kyle decided, screw it. What if Frankenstein found the Blazing World and they took these two public domain properties and they're just telling a swashbuckling story with Frankenstein and the Blazing World. So great dudes. Kyle is an extraordinary artist. When you know Kyle is on the book, it's going to be great art. Clay is, we give him a lot of shit, but only because we like him so much. So definitely recommend checking that book out.
And then next up would be Meraki number 5,
Yes.
which is by M.K. Palmer. It's a futuristic Odyssey-adventure story. But
Odyssey of the Greek gods, Odyssey.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So the Greek gods have created hybrid humans in the future, and the good news is the Greek gods are just as shitty in this tale as they were in the old myths. So the hybrid humans have to deal with some shitty asshole gods.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's got a nice LGBTQ plus viewpoint on it, and it's got some really beautiful art. It's definitely a book worth backing.
Yeah, MK definitely wanted to make sure there was good representation in her books.
Mm-hmm.
And the great thing about the representation in her books is they don't have to be perfect. So she lets her queer characters also be flawed, also be greedy, also be assholes. So they don't have to be the savior in every thing, because she didn't want that either. And I think that's what we got.
Yep, I think that's it, man.
All right, everybody who came in, Kyle, Jeff, Joey, John, thank you for your comments. You kept it going for us. Mario and Anthony, thank you for joining us, and we appreciate it. Will and I will be back tomorrow. We'll get more into the crossover division campaign and the TART campaign. But as we promised Anthony and Mario, we were going to shut it down quickly tonight because I got to go to sleep and I'm old. So we weren't going to jump in on their book. But thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night. It's going to be Will, myself, and Alex Cormack of the Dig campaign is going to join us to talk about all things gore, sync, Glasgow, and horror crime. So hope to see you tomorrow night at 11 Eastern. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, mate.